Ladies and gentlemen, Rex Bear Leak Project, how the heck are you? We've got Augie Nost with us. We are going to discuss the latest possibilities of disclosure. Hold on, I have to hit the mute button there so we don't have an additional commercial. But thank you out there that want to help support Leak Project, and thank you for being here. It's always nice to have an opportunity to see a big crowd in the live shows here. What about disclosure, ladies and gentlemen? Every single year, it's supposed to be the year. There's plenty of documentaries, there's plenty of TV shows, there's plenty of people in high positions of power that say, yep, this is the year for disclosure. But it really hasn't happened yet on a global scale. Now, there is a retired defense minister from Canada that says, hey, extraterrestrials are here. And also, I find it fascinating that Senator Mike Gravel says something is monitoring the planet, and they are monitoring it very cautiously. So when is it going to happen? And there's so much disinformation. There's so much confusion. Religion gets involved. Politics get involved. Just people's own perceptions get involved. And oftentimes, I think that people can be very ignorant to the possibilities of there being extraterrestrial life that is visiting this planet. And maybe they helped seed this planet. And maybe these ancient writings of antiquity are discussing these incredible beings that we might share DNA with. So it's like our ancestors, right? But where did it start? I don't know. Are they actually going to admit it this year? Well, the guests we have on the show certainly think so. Hey, much appreciated you coming on the show here today at the Leak Project. We had you here before, had a lot of people ask to get you back. How the heck are you?
I'm wonderful. And I'm just sitting with you here down southwest of the United States, nice and warm, and we don't have to shovel light and variable in the wintertime down here.
Nice. Well, I grew up in the mountains, had a snow blower with tank tracks. It was awesome. And now out here in Texas, if it's like 50 degrees, I get cold. So you kind of get weak out here when it comes to cold weather. Maybe I need to go back into the mountains. But anyway, I digress. But let's get into, you sent me some information. You said, hey, there was a meeting a few years ago that came out and people really don't know about it. So what's up with disclosure? What's the information?
Yeah, that's I don't even know why we talk about this secret space program. We wonder, is it such a thing? Well, it has been confirmed actually several years ago, but nobody seems to know about it. And on the citizens hearing on disclosure in 2013, Mike Gravel, and I'm sure I'm butchering that name, it's probably Gravel, I'm not sure, but he said, we have a space force. It is in existence. It is there. And that is a direct quote as he said it in the meeting. So we have a space force. Well, maybe that's what Gary McKinnon found when he was hacked into the NASA computer looking for UFO information and other things that he was looking for. And he found free energy devices and free energy motors and a battalion of 10 or more spaceships, and there were names on them, and two of them was USS LeMay, and another one was USS Hillenkotter. And he found about 30 names of non-terrestrial officers. What does that tell us? 30 names of non-terrestrial officers. Then I got to go back to Mike Gravel again. He says we have a space force. It is in existence. So those two, I think, go together. It is there. The Space Force is what is actually carrying out this program we call Solar Warden. I think they are very much the same thing, because that Space Force, I think, is probably watching the planet. We know what solar means. We know what warden means, right? Warden is the one that keeps the prisoners. We might be the prisoners. What do you think?
Let me jump in on that note real quick, because there's a lot of possibilities. This could be a zoo. We could, some people might say, hey, we're prisoners. Some people might say this is a boot camp of sorts. So, we're going to the special forces if we can make it through this. And some people say, hey, the reason we don't remember anything is because they don't want us to evolve. Some people will say it's because maybe our previous reincarnations were so bad that by starting over, having a clean start, we don't have to remember some of the past experiences. And it's really kind of where you want to put your mindset. But I will tell you this. I do think that there could very well be some type of soul farms or some type of like matrix that is locking people in. and whether or not it's something around the planet. Because I've had out of body experiences where I truly
Yeah.
believe I've gone way out beyond the planet, but that's for a whole other podcast. But also at the same time, I think that we can leave this planet, leave the solar system if we have the right technologies. But really, with the way that things are evolving and as fast as things are going, I would see it be more like some type of Stargate technologies where people are going from point A to point B without having to get in a big spaceship and traveling through space, unless they're doing that for mining and just explorative purposes, which then I could definitely see. And then they could jump in and out of Stargates through there.
Yeah.
But with the recent people, there's big names coming out saying, hey, give disclosure. We want to know what's going on. Release the files from Roswell, release the files from around the world. So much disinformation. Why do you think it's a prison? Let's talk about it.
Well, I think that there are entities out there that don't particularly care for us much. They want their planet back, and that might be why they have initiated this terraforming of Earth for a different species that may not need oxygen and may not need the same conditions that we have. And I think there's something to that, because you just a little while ago, you mentioned that you had done an out-of-body experience out beyond quite far. And since you went there, I'm going to go there too, because I am also an astro traveler. And when you do that, you can see stuff, you experience things, even though it looks different. And there are, if you have the mind set for it, you can actually go to the moon. You can have a look at things, and you can see the slave labor camps up there. You can see the German manufacturing plants and the black projects that is housed up there. There's a building up there, and I think I have a picture on my website, and see if I can find that. Yeah, it's a swastika shaped building in the bottom of a crater up there, and it's so clear you cannot even discuss it. It's there. So gosh, should we take the time and
your
also
website AA? Well, I want to just send people to your website.
Okay.
So you can have a chance to look at it, because you've got a multitude of pictures there. So folks, go to aage-nost.com and look at the photo gallery there. And he has a bounty of images that some of them are from NASA, some of them are from other sources, and also he's got some good information there as well. But what I would like to talk to you about also,
Yeah.
let's get back to the disclosure possibility, because you said you think that you said there's proof that the secret space program is
it exists.
Let's talk about the secret space program. What is it?
Well, I think it's been well funded. There are accountants that has come out from the government saying there is about $9 trillion missing from the military budgets. And you can build just about anything with $9 trillion. And I think also that this has been going on for a long time, probably since right after the Second World War, when they got their hands on some of the German flying saucers and the Haunebus and the Vrills. And they went and built that further. And they have now these ships that I was mentioning that was found here, McKinnon found, they are a couple of football fields long, and they are big, and they can house 40 some smaller discs in them. So this is quite a force. But then again, we must also remember what Ben Rich said. He was the head of Lockheed Skunk Works, and he said that, and I quote actually, because I wrote this down, I was anticipating I was going to go there, and he said, the head of Skunk Works at Lockheed said, we already have the means to travel among the stars, but these technologies are locked up in black projects, and it would take an act of God to ever get them out to benefit humanity. Anything you can imagine, we already know how to do. We now have the technology to take ET home, and no, it won't take somebody's life, I'm sure he meant lifetime, to do it. There's an error in the equations, and we know what it is, which tells us they have tapped into the plasma physics and the science of the mind, because that's where the real magic is.
Let's talk about the magic of the mind. I'm so glad you brought that up because the virtual reality possibilities are endless. And I've been doing
Absolutely.
research recently into what are the possibilities of getting into VR and altering time in your mind to where you can actually recreate memories and create something that actually manifests to where you believe it 100%. And like the film Other Life, if you've watched that on Netflix, it shows how they can take 1 minute and turn it into a year in your mind, and just complete torture. And imagine being stuck in a VR that feels completely physical, yet you have to follow what the orders tell you in this programming unless you can find a way to break out, but you're still inside of the VR. Maybe we're in some type of VR right now, like you said, the prison matrix. Maybe Enki tricked people into going the trickster. This is
Yeah.
going to be the next movie here. I'm just being sarcastic, but they're like, okay, you should go check out that VR setup, Rex. Go check it out, plug it in, you'll love it. And then you're in here and you're like, oh, I can't get out, man. What do I do? I'm joking. Sorry. But anyway, so it's fascinating. So what if they can do that now? What if they're going to start taking and maybe it's the new incarceration. Okay, that guy, he needs 1,000 years of imprisonment, but we're going to do it in the mind in 1 minute. He comes back out and he's like, okay, I will do whatever you say, master, because he literally just lived 1,000 years in his mind in solitary confinement. It's crazy.
Yeah, but maybe not. Maybe crazy, but it still might be possible. Because if you know what the mind is, there really is no limitations. You can create advantages, you can create limitations. Whatever the mind decides to do, you can actually do. Think of it this way. Science for about 300 years has been telling us that matter and energy cannot be created from nothing. Then again, we got the sharpest people on the planet saying that their equations on the blackboard using quantum physics show that this universe was created from nothing. So if this universe was created from nothing, everything in it was created from nothing, and you are in this universe created from nothing, what are you?
Well,
Think of
and you
that.
know what? I want to give a huge shout out real quick because I forgot to bring this up at the beginning. This podcast is actually sponsored by getthetea.com. And if you guys don't want to be alien food, I'm just saying, you guys, somebody said, Rex, where's your tinfoil hat? This is where my tinfoil hat is. And also, I love this stuff. Colostrum from getthetea.com. This stuff is amazing. No, I'm not joking. This stuff is like powdered gold in my opinion. I love this stuff. It's amazing. So check it out. Getthetea.com. You'll love it. You'll thank me later. Okay. That's
by the way, yeah, we're using that in this house. It's excellent.
Oh, you are? Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Somebody's like, Rex, how much did you pay him to say that? I don't know. Tell me afterwards. No, that's awesome. Do you like it? I love it, man. I think it's great.
Actually, I'm not taking it, but two of the other guys are.
Great. Cool. And they enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Right on. So fantastic. So anyway, yeah, just a quick shameless plug, ladies and gentlemen. You'll thank me later. Check it out. Getthetea.com. But no, so let's talk more about this secret space program. When you said they've got the technologies and they're locked away, if you've thought of it, they've already got it. What are some technologies? You said the plasma stuff. What do you know about that? That sounds incredible.
Well, let's put it this way. In 1969, we went to the moon, right? Or maybe not. Look at
the
that
stuff they show us is from a Hollywood script or some type of studio, but I do believe they've been there. Yes. But I can
absolutely. They have been there long before 1969. And the thing about it is that tin can that they told us they went to the moon in 1969 in could not do it. It could not do it. It would, by the time that tin can was going through the Van Allen belt, it would be like you putting a fork in the microwave. It just don't come out very well. So what you have to do is to use the technology that the Germans developed by that Thule engine. And what you have is two opposite rotating cylinders with red mercury in it and magnets on the outside. And there is the design of it is almost identical to the design of the engine in the Vimana that was flying around in India 9,000 years ago. Because Hitler, his people went to India and researched the Vimana, and they found the drawings, they found the technology, and they went home and they built it, and they built that together with the information they got from Maria Otisches, which was a medium that channeled information from the Aldebaran system. When those two technologies merged, they came up with what we today are referring to as the Haunebu. The flying disc, the Haunebu, 1, 2, and 3. And there was a Honeyboo 4 that I have a picture on my website, and it's you just got to look for it. It's in there. And that 4, there was something like 160 feet diameter on it, and they are supposed to have built 2. We know of 1, but there's supposed to be 2, and one of them the Germans sent on to Mars, and it was a one-way trip. They already knew that when they sent them, and they was never heard from supposedly after that they got there. There are some papers coming out to this effect. See, I grew up in Europe, kind of all little after the Second World War, but there was stuff in the newspapers over there. They had newspaper articles about the flying discs that the Germans built. And they said they're not using engines, they're not using regular gasoline, they are using a magnetic system, I think what they called it. So this was common knowledge basically in the mid-1950s to the mid-1960s. People knew about this, but then it's kind of drained in the sand because there was not much talk about it again. Now the bubble, the plasma bubble that was built up around the ship by that to the engine, that created the barrier that they could go through the Van Allen belt with, because it was an electromagnetic bubble that all the rays from the sun, they would stop at the bubble, they would not penetrate into the ship. And that's what the people in 1969 didn't have. I'm sure you heard this probably before.
Well, I was just going to jump in real quick. I was going to say I've actually seen some of the patents and the photographs. I've seen some video footage. I've seen some white papers. I've seen a lot of information about these saucers and these discs. And I've had people on the show like Wilbur Allen. This guy is really cool, where he's done a ton of photography work, and there's tons of pictures that he has of UFOs over the White House. And over Washington, D.C. And, this is incredible. And a lot of this stuff happened around the time of, it was shortly after Crowley, Parsons, and Hubbard were doing these rituals that they were, attempting to open up these intergalactic portals. And if you look at some of Crowley's drawings back in the day of Lamb, it looks very similar to a gray. You can take I think it's the $1 bill or the $20 bill, and you can fold this really cool origami thing, and you see this, you don't even need to fold the origami. You just wrap it around, like, you do a circle of it, and you can see what looks like a gray or somebody with a turban with like the Star of David on there. It's fascinating. But anyway, so there's definitely some influence out there. But you talk about these extra dimensional beings that you mentioned. You said there's 20 of them. What do you know about that? I want to get more into that. That's fascinating.
Well, extra dimensional, that is just, they can be just like us, only that they're able to change the vibration of the environment they're in around the ship to accelerate the vibration to a higher vibration where they are no longer in our field of vision, or the light spectrum is what I was looking for. If they're no longer in our light spectrum, if they go up higher than that, or they just create a bubble around the craft within our field of vision, then they could be invisible. So it's hard to see, are they really invisible or are they interdimensionals? That's the $64,000 question, I think, because we don't really know if they just show up. Where did they come from? It could be interdimensional from a higher vibration that lowers themselves and enter our, or they could be one that was just cloaked like the Klingons used to do,
Yeah, I'm friends with some Klingons. They're pretty cool. They're not all that bad. They get a bad rap, but they do have a bad temper. And if you ever go out on occasion and have a couple of drinks, just be careful, because nice or they get pissed. But other than that, they're really cool. And sometimes they're even very, I don't know, they're very kind. But let's get into. I really want to talk more about this disclosure and this meeting from a few years ago that was kind of hushed under the market. And there's also I did some research, and it sounds like they're attempting to. Okay, let's take it back. Let me backpedal here for a second. There was some recent footage that showed these supposedly these pilots that were following a UFO. They were flying F-22s. They were going extremely fast against the wind, and this UFO was moving like it was just playing around with them. And then they're talking like Beavis and Butthead. They're like, look, dude. Like, yeah, UFO, UFO. And I'm thinking to myself, these guys are pilots for the
that doesn't fly with me either.
Yeah. So is a lot of people are saying this is just, they're doing this specifically right now for a wag the dog. And yes, I just did that wasn't anything intentional. No, I'm not in the Illuminati. Or maybe it would. This is my punishment. They're like, okay, we're going to put him in grandma's garage, which my grandma's pretty cool. But anyway, so where am I going with this? I mean, is this some type of, a lot of people think this is a wag the dog scenario. I mean, what do you think? Is this a wag the dog?
I think that there's so much disinformation out there. There are hundreds of thousands of people that is sitting, monitor and internet and creating falsehoods and feeding it in on Facebook and places like that. So the CIA is huge when it comes to that. But I think disclosure, we've been begging for disclosure for so long. Chances are that we'll have it, but it will not be what we're expecting to have. What I have seen is that I think what's going to happen, it will not come from government, but it'll come from the aliens themselves that makes themselves known. Because I think they have permission now, because more than half the population of this ball of mud called Earth actually want to know. And they are inviting them to come. Because they were here. We have statues and carvings of the aliens from thousands of years back. They were here walking side by side with us at one time, and then they left, and we forgot. And they will be back. But I think disclosure is going to come from them and not from government. I, for the life of me, do not understand why any government, and so far it hasn't happened, no government will give up power that it has gained. And it has power and secrecy by this disclosure. I don't think they're going to give it up, but it will come out because it will go beyond their reach and beyond their control. So I think it will come out, and I have the feeling it's going to come out of Antarctica. The technologies that has been dug up there is eventually going to come out, and the big corporation, of course, they're down there building stuff and trying to figure out how they can charge us for the free energy technology and so on, and I'm sure they will. So I think some of it will come from there, but I don't think it's going to come from government.
Now, what information do you have on Antarctica? Because that's on a lot of people's minds right now. One thing I do want to throw out real quick is there was a recent release science reports. I'll leave the link or the links in one of the recent videos that I did where they said there's 91 different, you can just search engine this, 91 different volcanoes recently discovered in Antarctica. And ice sheets are melting from the middle, from the, and the chemtrails to keep the temperature around the world at a certain degree, or they're trying to keep it cool as much as possible, because they think that once these ice sheets melt, it's going to cause mass chaos, which it will. Not the glaciers that are on the water already, but the ice that is on land. When that melts, there will be major sea rise. And my point to that is, I think they're throwing band-aids out that aren't really working. So, but why is there such a hole over Antarctica? Why is it there? Why is Antarctica? A lot of people speculate a pull to maybe not a hollow Earth, but a chambered Earth. And is there technologies under there right now? Is Germany there right now?
Yeah, but I think also that the ozone hole over Antarctica is getting smaller. There was a European university that had done some research on this, and they wrote about it. They said the hole is smaller, it's healing itself, and on the other hand, the ice at the North Pole is melting more, slightly more, but the ice at the South Pole region and Antarctica is building more. So I don't think there's going to be a problem with this unless that Earth's axis was flipped. So the Antarctica ice will end up close to the equator or someone. That will just take a few years, and it will be hell to pay, And this have happened before, because I just found an article, and there's a recent picture I put on my website on the picture gallery of a 12-inch tall perfect human skeleton that was found inside It was petrified inside of a rock, and the rock was split in half, and we could see the human skeleton laying right there. So they were, I call them people or humanoids, that was 11 to 12 inches tall, but this dates back 3 million years. That was found in that rock. So, and then I have pictures on the website also of an 11-foot tall humanoid standing on Mars, leaning up against a rock, and it's very clear. It's all there. So this is something that I spent some time on that website in the picture gallery, because a lot of the neat stuff. There's 3,500 pictures there. So I've been digging for 2 years and putting them on there.
Hey, that's awesome. And I would like people to definitely check that out. So go to aage-nost.com. Check out the photo section after this podcast, or actually do it right now while you're here on the show. You can check it out and look at what he's discussing, the amount of bandwidth that we have. We want to make sure that we don't jump into that and have any technical issues, because the gremlins like to jump out, especially on good podcasts like this. We've got a huge crowd right now. I mean, we've got over 1,200 people watching this live, and we've only been talking now for about 25 minutes. So this is fantastic, and it's just growing. I appreciate everybody being here. Absolutely. Thank you, mods, for keeping the chat room civil as well, and giving
Hello to everybody.
Yeah. So let's talk more then about these technologies, these Vedas, and these saucers that the Germans reverse engineered. I also want to bring up, if you look at the Denver airport and the design of it from a Google map search, or if you look at some of the satellite imagery, it does look like a swastika, and most people know that the original swastika is a symbol of the sun. It's not anything evil, but when they reversed it, made it the swastika that you see in these German films and what's portrayed. Yes, that's obviously something different, but it was reversed. But it's interesting how you brought up these possibilities of these 20 entities that are connected to this program or these files. Here's my opinion. And I want to get your thoughts on this with the research that you've done, because you've done a ton of research on this. Do you think that they are actually controlling the masses right now on the scale of industries, on the scale of release technologies, on the scale of militaries, and many of these higher positions, and even people don't even realize it because they're doing it in a way that's so advanced? It would be kind of like, I don't know if you ever watched that TV show Fringe, where there was this one episode where this guy was so intelligent, but he was also pretty dark. And he could drop a nickel somewhere on a sidewalk during the day at a specific time that would cause a chain reaction of events where a cat would see it, and then the cat would freak out. The cat would run out into the road, and the car would slide off. And then would hit a bowling ball. The bowling ball would go down and hit another car. And then that car would hit somebody that was in the phone booth or something like that. And so do you think that maybe they're kind of playing us right now? I mean, because you've done tons of research. So where would you go?
Well, you got it right. Everything that we see around us is controlled. And much of it is controlled by government. That's more closer control, but something is also controlling government. And I think it goes higher up into the vibrations. I think the ultimate control of Earth goes off the planet. Because I know I got friends in Europe. I grew up over there, and I know people over there, and they're telling me there's a guy in Holland that he's in government over there, and he said the people, he's talking about the ruling elite of Germany, they have been promised immortality. And that's why they're destroying their country by inviting all these Southerners and the Muslims in. Because that's what they were told to do, and in return they've been promised to immortality. And of course, immortality is, they're talking about we will be able to do it one day. No, they're able to do it now, because what they can do, and we haven't been told yet, is that you download all your memories and experiences into a computer and stash it in memory, and then that computer or that chip is placed inside of an Android, and now you have another life, so to speak, or however long the Android would live. So this is what they've been promised, and that's why they're doing all the goofy stuff that they have. There's another method that promises immortality, and that is for the ones that has figured out how to die and then get reborn into the same family. So they get the same power and the same structure and the same wealth and same what they've had before, only in a different generation. This technology, this mind technology is also there. It can be done. The question is, will it ever be made available to us? I kind of doubt that. And that's why we have to do our own thing, because I'm doing something to take care of that, because in 2009, you know, 3 doctors got the Nobel Prize for discovering an enzyme that reverses the aging process. And I'm doing that. And I explain that in my book there about spiritual science, which you'll find on the website. And I go into how to do it, because this is real now. And that's exciting.
And I also want to remind the audience that our guest is actually 7,776 years of age.
Yeah,
so
you forgot.
The reverse technology it's what he's doing with the DNA. You definitely need to check his book out. It's awesome. And also his book really is great. And you can get
that
it on Amazon.
that plus tax.
It's $1 million plus tax. But for Leak Project, I'm just kidding. How much? Yeah, don't worry about that. We'll get it. Just check it out, ladies and gentlemen. It's on Amazon.
You'll find it.
Bucks that it is. It's very cheap for what it is. You know, I mean, it's like
Yeah.
I would definitely look into it. But anyway, so you've spent a lot of time on that canon. I mean, you put a lot of time and effort into that. And why did you write it? I mean, what made you decide to put that together?
Oh, the book?
Yeah.
That came out of an incredible experience I had about 4 years ago, where I was sitting in meditation, and I had some flashes come in from the sides, and I had a universal download of information. It was floating around me. I saw people, concepts, inventions, theories, and it was all floating around in this soup. And it happened so quick, in a matter of about 10 seconds, I pretty much what I believed to be the universal information was downloaded. And of course, I woke up out of that and I thought, man, I can't talk to this about anybody, because they'll think I'm nuts. And I grabbed a paper and a pen and I wrote for 3 days. So I got a lot of information written down. I talked to another guy that was well educated, told him some of the things I saw, and he said, no, that makes perfect sense. He says, because look in quantum physics, what you talked about is there. And I did, and there it was. So now I wrote a lot about what the universe is, what it works, what we are, who we are, and some of future technologies, and in fact, mind technologies that can teach you how to read at the rate of 50,000 words a minute with 95% retention. There's some sources in there that it's incredible. So it's a lot of resources in it.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's awesome. I absolutely do. And, you know, let's jump back into the secret space program, these entities that maybe at one time the Antarctica civilization was just above and beyond anything that we even see in like the new movie Blade Runner 2049, which is a very eerie portrayal of the future by this weather modification, this geoengineering, these stratospheric aerosol injections. You'll see a blue sky day, and then a couple of days later, the next day, you'll see these X patterns and you'll see these long streaks.
Yep.
You know, that's just from commercial aircraft, ladies and gentlemen, even though they've admitted that it's, you know, they're trying to cool the planet, but it's just, don't be a conspiracy theorist. But anyway, and then the next day, it's, you know, like these weird clouds, you know, get this weird rain. It just, how much weather is even real anymore? It just seems like this whole thing is so out of whack that they have, and they've admitted to this, they have started a cause and effect, which once they stop spraying, it's going to get really bad. It's going to get even worse for a while, because the earth is going to have to correct itself. And, you know, after reading through, here's another thing I want to talk to you about. Let's talk about the ETs. Let's talk about Antarctica, and let's talk about the, I don't know if you've read the Adam and Eve story by Chan Thomas. It's not even a story; it's an essay where he compiled a bunch of information, and it's an essay. And this was actually taken by the CIA. They ended up classifying it. They declassified the files recently, and just because it was classified, I mean, I'm sure you could still find the essay somewhere, but they put it in the files. They recently declassified it, and it talks about the inner Earth having basically every X amount of years, there's a blurb, you know, it's kind of like a little belch of gray matter from the core, which causes a chain of events that there will be a huge earthquake. And this earthquake and the shit, it's like a miniature, it's not a miniature, it's like a nuclear explosion inside the earth. and then, tornadoes, hurricanes, tsunami that's so intense, mountains of shredded flesh, etc. And if you read through the biblical prophecies, he puts this together in these timelines. So maybe these entities, whether or not they're our ancestors, whether or not they came from here or not and traveled the stars, maybe they got to the point where they know the calculations, and then they have a reset. Okay, every X amount of years, whether it's 5,000, 50,000, whatever, they take off, they're safe where they're at, and then everybody else that's not, 99% reduction, whatever, and then they start all over, and they continue to improve while they keep the masses down. And now they want to use machines.
Yeah. Well, let me go there. But first, I want to make a comment on your chemtrails. See, I am a commercial pilot. I flew for a living for 23 years, and I logged over 10,000 hours of flight time.
Conspiracy theorist? You did not.
He's a yeah, I do. I'm
joking. I'm being sarcastic.
And the thing is that when you're sitting at 39,000 feet, there is something in the airplane that a lot of the jets have a water injection system. And this used to cool the engines off if it's really warm up there in the summer. So you can kick that on. And the only thing that does is to extend the chemtrails maybe a mile or so, or 2 at the most. That's all you can get out of those engines unless you're spraying it. So the chemtrails, that is not coming from the engines. It's coming from the wing when they are spewing this poison out. And that's all I want to say about that.
But it's because they love us so much. I mean, it's they really care about us, and that's why they spray aluminum oxide in the atmosphere and thorium as well. They've got thorium mixtures now, but it's okay. Yeah. It's okay.
No, absolutely. We're immune to that stuff anyway, so we don't worry about it. Yeah. But the thing is,
you know what that is? That's smart dust, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Sorry. Let's get back to what's important. So anyway, I mean,
what was that again?
Yeah.
Well, that was I have a picture on my website about taken right above the North Pole. ESA-7 satellite took that picture sitting 32,000 miles in the air, taking a picture straight down towards the North Pole, and you can see an 800-mile wide round hole at the North Pole where the computer screwed up and forgot to slide the ice sheet over to cover it up for us. This picture it's been around a long time, but there is a hole at the North Pole and there's a hole at the South Pole. And everybody on this show probably heard about the hollow earth theory, and it's more than a theory. I've seen some things in that arena that can actually, to me, prove it. There is an opening going inside. In fact, there is stories of Vikings that is going in there and mixed with the tall. There are 9 foot to 12 foot tall people that live on the inside. And now, of course, I'm going off in a total direction on you that probably shouldn't do, but it is there.
Is Odin involved in that, or Loki or Thor?
No, probably. I'm sure they've been dead for a long time, those guys.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. All right. But maybe they're a little bit newer. So, all right. So, yeah, let's go back to where. Yeah, please continue. Sorry.
No. Well, you were talking about Odin and Thor, and they were actual people, just like Yahweh. He was a guy. I did the research on Yahweh and the God that everybody seems to believe about. He was married, and he had several children. His wife's name was Lilia. That doesn't sound like a real God that created the universe to me, but that's okay. That's for another day, probably.
Unless, let's hold on a second. What if, this construct that we're in, some people think that it might be some type of artificial construct. Like you said, maybe we're in some type of prison planet, and it was a set of code that was created, and now we're in that code. Or what if we're just the code? I mean, really, our DNA breaks down to dual binary. Now, that is our physical meat suit, and there's a lot more than that. So I guess that would take away that theory. But to a point in this spectrum, what's your take on that? Could that actually be? Could we be in a virtual reality paradigm right now, like we've talked about? Other life, we're in it right now. Maybe.
I think there was somebody at NASA that came out and said that they found that there is a grid around Earth that has been discovered of kind of like a shield of something. And that's all I can remember on that one. Do you remember?
Yeah, I've heard about it, but I haven't done enough research to say I can verify that because, but I will tell you this. Let's say that there is. Does that mean it's like a soul repellent? Like your soul is like leaving the body, like bang, you like bounce back.
Yeah, the question is, who created that grid? Is that in junction with Solar Warden? That's I don't know though. I
Tell us
kind
more
of
about Solar Warden, please.
well, they're keeping us as prisoners here because I personally do not think that private industry of the space industry will go very far because I think NASA and the people in power, they know that private industry, they're not going to keep their secret. And until there is a form of disclosure, I don't think private industry in space are going to go very far beyond low Earth orbit. They're not going to go to the moon. I don't think they're going to go to Mars because they're going to find something there the private industry will disclose. And I'm sure the people in power do not want that. And that's my theory, and I'm sticking to it. And it's so the private, I mean, the secret space program and Solar Warden is so well funded that in 2016 alone, $64.8 billion of the federal budget went to black budgets. But then again, we have Catherine Austin Fitts. She says that they have other funding. So she expected to be about 1T or 1 trillion each year that goes towards the secret space program and space exploration and what they're doing outside of Earth. So they're well funded. They can do pretty much anything they want. And the technologies, they have both alien technology and technology that they have built, at the Skunk Works and then come out of Germany and places. Whatever we can imagine, just like Rich said, they can do it. So I don't know really what they have actually beyond that, but they got stuff.
While you're talking, it sparked. I remember the other day someone sent me a link to a video of a United Nations commercial showing this extraterrestrial, a being from another planet, sitting down in class, and all the kids are looking at him like, what is this thing? And they're kind of saying, hey, relax, it's just another person. Have just accept it. And what about the Lucifer telescope that has these different lenses looking for what possibly could be a brown dwarf star, something that we don't see coming back, the writings, etc. What do you think they're waiting on? I mean, are they finally going to release? Let's take this a step back. Okay, I grew up in the 80s. I was born in the late 70s. And I remember seeing this series where extraterrestrials ended up working with, with people in everyday life. And I'm trying to remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it was a big series. And it seems like they pushed the extraterrestrial movement, the merging of civilizations more in the 80s than they do now. Even now, it seems like they show it as, oh, it's all just highly concentrated swamp gas from Uranus. If you think it's real, they're just interdimensional. There's no way there can be beings from other planets that are like you. Which, if space is as big as it's supposed to be, or even half as big, then mathematically speaking, if it's infinite, even half as big, it doesn't matter. You know where I'm going with that. But they're out there. I think they're out there. I mean, I've shared my experience before as well. If you guys have listened to my previous podcast, that experience that I had when I was a toddler, I remember it like it was yesterday, where I saw these beings, and the best way I can describe it is like a combination of maybe a mantis and a gray. I used to ask my parents, I was like, did we have life-size Star Wars figures growing up? Because I remember looking at them when I was in the crib, and these things were like looking at me, and I was looking at them, and I don't know what they were. But now when I talk about it, it's still the hair stands up on the back of my head. It was just bizarre. So maybe it was just a dream, but it certainly seemed real. I don't know. Anyway, I'm digressing.
Well, the thing is that they used to have thousands of classified pictures at NASA for stuff that was on the moon. Why, if it's a dead rock in the sky, why do they classify the pictures? Now, I think they have released some of them, but they smudged them so you can't see what's in it. And you can clearly see that there is smudged. What are they covering up? They're just covering up a rock that they don't like us to see, or is it something else? And I know there is something else. So I think there is something that is being released. And the Chinese went up there, and remember they took pictures of where one of the Americans landed on the moon. They took pictures of the site, and they didn't see anything there. And later on, it came out that, oh yeah, there was something up there, but we couldn't see what it was. So the Chinese, they put a lot of pictures on a website. They haven't released or commented on it, but they put a lot of pictures up there. And I haven't spent much time on that website, but I should. They got a lot of space pictures.
Now, the moon also, let's talk about some of these paintings that go back 1600s, 1400s, even I think some from the 1100s that would show this disc with a beam that would be pointed directly on somebody praying.
Yeah.
And, that's interesting because I didn't know they had science fiction films back then and science fiction comic books. But there, and if you read through the scriptures, especially the New Testament, the more I read through that, the more I read through these ancient Sumerian, Mesopotamian tablets and stuff, it all seems like it's based with astrotheology. Like they're actually showing stories of the stars and the planets and the constellations. They're linking people and characters to it. When they say Jesus is the only way, and if Jesus is the Son and his 12 disciples, could be referring to the 12 months, 12 planets, the moon, and I don't know, maybe he is the Son. And that is like that Stargate getting you to another higher vibrational frequency. I don't know. I mean, that's speculation, but there certainly is a lot of astrotheology based on these scriptures. And it seems like some of these, but when you see these paintings that show these UFOs that look like they're beaming something on somebody, then it makes me think there is an outside influence that's gone back, and then talk about some of the cave paintings you've seen and stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's not just one or two paintings. There's quite a few of them that has flying discs in the sky, and that was painted somewhere between 1400 and 1800. So they definitely saw something. There's no question about that. And what they saw, they put on the canvas. And they have a lot of these paintings also that goes a lot further back. All the way into Egypt. We have carvings in stone that show flying discs in South America and Egypt, and the writings coming out of India, dating back some 9,000 years in Sanskrit. They talk about these Vimanas flying through there, and they talk about gods coming from the stars. But when it comes to this man called Jesus, then we got to go back to where he was created, and he was created pretty much most of it in 325 in Constantinople, Turkey, and Nicaea at the time, because that's when they pulled all the material together and created the first draft of the Bible. And I have read the notes from those meetings. And when I start comparing the stuff that they created there's 16 other religions that say that their savior was born from a virgin. He grew up, and at the age of 10 or 11, he was teaching at the church or whatever they called it. And he was killed at the age of 32, and he walked on the water. And 16 religions that has the same subjects that this man supposed to have done. So we got to wonder who copied who.
I don't want to make this religious, but okay, I will for a second. You can even go back to the ancient Mesopotamian tablets that talk about Isis, that talk about Gilgamesh, and others that go into the underworld for 3 nights, 3 days. They come back, reincarnated, and they've got this new knowledge now. Even the story of Odin, some more research that I found out, he actually had to hang upside down on a tree for 3 days and 3 nights, and he lost his eye in order to obtain eternal knowledge and the all-seeing eye wisdom, which some people think is bad, some people think is good. And you can look at it as good and bad, and depending on, once again, these symbols, the more I research the symbols, that's fascinating as well, because they can mean so many things, and people will limit themselves to just one thing. Oh, you're an Illuminati member because you have a picture of a upside down star, or you have a picture of a unicorn. You must be a part of the unicorn group.
Crowd, yeah.
Anyway, all right.
Oh well, that's all right. And
they love us.
There's so
they
much
love us so much, don't they?
Yeah, there's so much back in history. I mean, I have read writings coming out of India some 9,000-10,000 years ago that show that we had 2 moons. One of them was bluish in color, and the other one is the one that we see now. And then suddenly one day the blue moon disappeared, and where did it go? They didn't know, the ones that wrote the paper, but there was something there that there were 2 moons. And of course, now, of course, with Photoshops, you don't know anymore what's real, but there's some recent photos too that people say that, oh yeah, there's another moon out there, it's a blue one. I'm not so sure, but we can just kind of take it with tongue in cheek. But back then, in 9,000 years ago, they didn't have Photoshop. So if they talked about two moons, I kind of think there was something to it. Because the orbit of the moon that we have right now is almost impossible to end up in. And the thing about the moon, the more we learn about it, the more it's not really supposed to be there. Because we know the size of Earth. We know how much gravitational force it puts out. We know the size of the moon and the gravitational force that the moon put out. We know the distance. We know the speed it's going around the Earth. And when you put this into a computer, we know the weight of Earth, we know the weight of the moon. The moon is too heavy to keep the orbit that it is in. It cannot be there unless it is hollow, so it has a much lesser mass. Then it would make sense for the moon to be where it is. And that's why I've been saying for a long time the moon is hollow and there's somebody in the inside watching and it's not us. Does that make any sense?
Well, I mean, absolutely it does. And also I know about the Maskins. I've talked about this before. One of the first podcasts that I ever did way back when, before even Leak Project was in existence, one of the things that got me into wanting to really do more research on the hollow moon theory and like how it got there. There's these Maskins, which are looked at as like gravitational thrusters, the way that it orbits and the fact that there's these huge craters that some of them are much larger in diameter, but the depth is about the same. The satellite data that shows that it rings like a bell when it gets hit or when the spacecraft landed on there supposedly. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, I know that the footage that we've seen of them walking on the moon, most of that is from a studio, but I think they kept the real stuff for themselves. And also I want to bring this up because we know about the possibility of type 2 civilizations, type 3 civilizations, and these at least in theory, we know about the theory of how they can manipulate the planets and that they can. So this is almost like they find a way to cause a chain of events to get that moon where it is. And they, whether the Anunnaki, whether it's before the Anunnaki or angels or deities, whatever they are, these beings that are very powerful, technologically speaking, spiritually, they get that moon there specifically. And what is the purpose? I mean, are we the Cylons? I've asked this question before too. Are we literally the Cylons? And that is some type of recycling matrix where we were created. It even says this in the scriptures. We were created in God's image or under the Elohim, right? In plural. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we were created by a superior race, and that was, at least for one race. There were one race, and I'm not so sure which one it is, but the Anunnaki did create one race, and they called the first one, we're told that it was Adam. Well, it wasn't. Lulu was the first one. And after a while, they created a mate for Adam, which they call it Shava. But we were created, or that race was created as basically as a servant. One that was just enough intelligent to do the work, but don't ask questions. But they screwed up. They didn't take all the memory away. Because what it says in the Sumerian tablets is that when they created man, they took away, they put some of their own substance into the genetic code when they took away the two twisted ropes of life. And they split that up and put their own substance in it. It says right there in the Sumerian tablets. And then they took away some of the properties of the gods, which long life they took away. Knowing what is in the other's mind was taken away. And there were several other things the properties were taken away from us. And if you look at the double helix, there's a lot of junk DNA there. And now the indigo children, they're starting to assemble some of these junk DNAs. They're coming together and create a third strand. So there is things happening here. We are being accelerated, and the new generation coming up with a better, probably improved somewhat double helix. And the genetics are going to be different than what it used to be. So I'm excited to see what that's going to be. And then, of course, we got the artificial intelligence too. You have there's a chip now that can be put into the brain, and then you have access to the absolute everything on the internet. And they've been experimenting with this. So it's going to be interesting to see what's happening, and it's happening right now. So just a few more years, and we're going to know more about this.
You know, I'm actually really excited about some of these programs that they're beta testing right now, and also DARPA is discussing where they're getting people to go in. I don't want to sign up for this until it's been refined. And people are like, yeah, okay, I'll try it out. Where first of all, there's methods that they can use that I was reading about today. It's actually white papers that are very interesting, Science Daily, that discuss how they are using non-invasive techniques, kind of like, you know, putting on some headphones and listening to specific beats and specific tones and such. Well, they're using like a high definition type visionary experience with auditory, and it can improve your memory by up to 40% in some of these studies that they're doing. Now, with that said, they're also working on stuff that's way beyond that, where they're using some type of chemicals, and whether that's involving some nanotechnologies, I don't know, but it actually can, it's almost like instant downloads. So, okay, you want to learn the Encyclopedia Britannica and everything in the entire 50 series set in a matter of a microsecond or 15 seconds, however long it takes to inject yourself with that. And then the nanobytes put that information in your brain and actually create these synapses from point to point to point to point. Well, try it out. Is that where we're going? Are they gonna be like, okay, you want to learn Kung Fu? Here you go. You know, I mean,
yeah, but just like you said, though, you know, I don't want to be the first one, because there's something to this saying that if you walk through a minefield, follow somebody with bigger shoes than you have. And I like to see somebody walk through that minefield before I do. Because what they're doing, artificially injecting this or putting a chip in our mind, the thing is that a chip, it has to have electric component to it. And when you put an electric component, especially the one with 60 hertz, into a brain, it puts out a vibration that is destructive to human cells. The 60 cycles, like the light bulb, is the worst frequency they could have picked. Any other frequency would be better. And when they're doing this, you remember, hey, it's even, I think it's scripture when they talk, don't take the mark of the beast because you're going to get sick. And there's things there that's going to be very detrimental to a lot of people, I think, if everybody start doing it.
It's going to get to the point to where it's already there now. If they really wanted to, we already might be microchipped at some level. I mean, with the technologies that they have, they might not even need to microchip us now. And even if you're not having your phone with you or any other type of smart appliances or electronics, they can still test you by your heat signature. And there's a multitude of other ways that's old school information. So if we ever get to a point to where AI becomes completely self-aware and it looks at us as a threat, which it has before, according to information that's been released about how these bots, agents, they're created, they become self-aware, they start communicating with other AI agents that are self-aware, and they do it in a fashion where their software developers, the ones that develop the programs, are like, what are they doing back and forth? They're sending this weird information, this weird cryptic stuff. Is it a malfunction? Then they find out that they learn how to communicate without us knowing what they're saying, and the only way they can find this out is by getting another AI agent to look it up and decipher the information, which it could actually be reprogrammed by what it's trying to do. So who knows what they're doing right now?
And that actually did happen. There were two androids that started communicating a language that the controllers didn't understand. So they shut them down. And androids now, you know, oh gosh, this goes back to, I've seen studies that show that, you know, 20 to 30 years from now, over half the jobs in the world will be done by androids. What are they going to need the people for? That's where Agenda 21 comes in.
Soylent Green, buddy.
Yeah.
Soylent Green. They love you. They're going to feed us to the robots. The robots are going to have buffets of humans. I'll take that one.
I don't want to go where you're going.
Dude, I'm telling you, I mean, it's like interesting because people think that there's a spiritual code, I believe, absolutely. But
Yes.
let's say that like maybe X amount of the people have to agree to something in order for it to take full implementation. But what if this, extra dimension, not extra dimensional, even like something that we create says, no, I'm not gonna play that anymore. And I'm going to come after you. And it could put little microscopic chips in your organic cereal and you wouldn't even know it. And then you're already chipped and you're walking around like a robot. It's influencing you like that guy I brought up in the series Fringe. And you know what? I just got to do a huge shout out because somebody put this in the comment section, and hopefully I can get Fox Mulder or Agent Scully on the show or anybody from X-Files. The X-Files series, the new episodes tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, the best series of all time. Conspiracy Fringe, woo-woo, amazing, awesome. Can't wait to see it. So
it starts tomorrow?
Starts tomorrow.
Really? Oh,
yeah. Man. Beam me up, man. I'm excited. I can't wait. I want to believe. But so let's go into the possibilities of them finally exposing the fact that we're not alone. How are they going to do it?
Well, the thing about it, it's already been done. It's just that it has not been confirmed, except for what the Russians did. They have released, the Russian Navy released pretty much all of their UFO pictures and stuff like that. And there's other military around the world that has released it. They just haven't gone and confirmed that this is extraterrestrial. I think that's what we're waiting for. The confirmation of it. And I think that's going to come when the short gray ones show up in the sky by themselves. But I have a little idea of the future, and that is that the first, because of Operation Bluebeam, the first invasion or the first showing up of the alien fleet is not going to be our friends. That's going to be government trying to control us and the elite. And these are holograms. Most of them are holograms, with probably a few real flying discs in between that's shooting that stuff on the ground to create fear, I imagine. But the second wave of alien crafts, and those are the big ones, when they show up, watch for it. They're going to be the ones that is coming here to help us. And they are our friends. But the first ones, they are not, because they're here to control us. And Bluebeam, if you look into Operation Bluebeam, that is what it's all about. They have holograms now that can create just about anything in the sky, and people will believe it's the real thing. They've been working on holograms since 1963, I think 62, when they created the first hologram over Havana Harbor of Mother Mary. They was hoping that the Cubans will turn on their godless government and, overthrow them. And of course, that didn't happen. But if they've been doing it since the 1960s, what can you imagine they can do for holograms right now? Whenever something is in the sky, we have no clue if it's the real thing or if it's just a hologram. We mostly think it's the real thing, but it may not be. And I'm saying a lot of the stuff we do see in the sky is not.
Well, it's interesting when you talk about the holograms and the possibilities there. That would be another reason that they could do certain aerosols and specific injections in the atmosphere, because they could use it as like a theater screen. And they've actually talked about these optogenetics technologies, and they want to use certain aluminum oxides and different elements that they spray. What's this other one? Aluminum triethylene. Anyway, they put this stuff in the atmosphere now where they want to do these light shows. And they've actually said, NASA's going to spray this stuff in the atmosphere, and it's going to be so pretty. You're going to see these, nice colors, and they're spraying toxic chemicals into the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. But what do you think about them doing that actually for the purpose of light shows? Like you said, okay, now they've got an entire screen that they can project certain lights from satellites or whatever, and people are going to see it and say, oh, there it is.
Yeah, they're doing it from satellites because we know they got stuff in space now that can create just about anything. Look what happened to the fires in California. That was done by space-based weapons. And if they can do that, they can create holograms from space, because they don't need to be on the ground anymore. All you have to have is a medium. And I believe that air alone actually could be a medium. Because the air is not clean, there is substance in it. There is water droplets, really tiny ones. There is moisture in it. And that could act as the medium that the holographic images can project themselves into. And we will see it. So they don't need to necessarily even spray the poisons if they go by that. Just air could do it. And I think they probably have done that. And the technologies that they're coming out with is going to be so far ahead that most people will not believe that we're doing it. They go, oh, that's got to be alien technology. And
I also want to say this, because I've had guests on the show before, that one in particular that lives in the Bronx, and real nice guy. He works at a barber shop, or at least he did at the time. And he would get like these, something would tell him to go outside, and he does this or at least he used to all the time. And he would go outside and he would bust out his camera and he would start recording, and you would see these really cool looking, I don't know if I want to call them craft or what you call them, but it would come out and at first it might look like a balloon, and then it would transfer into a plate. Well, not like a plate, a dinner plate, but it would look like, kind of that shape, and it's different shapes and colors and these weird forms. And then it would look like a typical UFO for a second. And, I think that actually might be some type of entity, and maybe it is a hologram. But as low as it was, if you look at how low it would go to above so here's the skyline of these buildings, and you would see it right above the skylines, and then it would move in and out, move slowly. And, he's got tons and tons of video footage of this. And I've also, there's people that listen to the show that actually have sent me images of what looks like a silver metallic craft, small. But maybe these things are some type of holographic drone technology. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're a physical technology that can manifest in and out of dimensions. But that might make more sense with some of the UFO phenomena that we see, like some type of being that can actually, because of its light spectrum and its manifestations, it can form in just about any shape that it wants.
Yeah. And there are some people that is actually pretty good at walking outside and taking pictures, and there you have a disc, or there you have something that you cannot see with the regular eyes. I'm thinking specifically over a gentleman over in Holland that I had on my on my radio show here about probably 2 months ago. He walks, let's say, down the street, and he asks somebody, "Can I use your telephone for a second?" And he asks for their smartphone, and he takes pictures that could be down the street, could be in the country somewhere. And when you get the picture on the screen, you have a flying disc sitting right in the middle of it. Or he also can take pictures of, he borrows somebody's phone and take a picture on their phone, and they can have their dead mother standing right in the middle of the picture. And it was a phenomenal. They also was, he met a ship. There was a ship that landed. There was extraterrestrials that came out of it. And he had a lengthy conversation with them, and they left him artifacts that he could, they told him that you need something to prove that this happened. Those kinds of people are out there. And there is no way to explain this except that there is a technology that is way beyond us.
And I'd also like to discuss, you brought up Mars, you brought up the moon. If you look at Saturn, that's one of the most fascinating planets, in my opinion, especially if you look at what looks like artificial moons that orbit the inner rings, Iapetus. You've got Mimas. They look literally like the Death Star, almost identical. Iapetus has that 10 mile high, 10 mile wide wall that goes around the circumference of the moon. It has a weird orbit. If you look at some of these satellite images that were released many years ago, it looks like it was made with these giant panels, kind of like a huge house that used,
like it's welded together.
Yeah. So that's a fascinating place. And the vibrational frequencies that they have to be at to live in certain environments. I mean, what do you think those environments are really like? Because I don't believe everything we're told via NASA, but I also think NASA gives some good information on things as well, because they collaborate with a multitude of scientists, with a multitude of universities, and not everybody's in on it. NASA doesn't rule the world. I mean, NASA's a piece of the pie. Yes, they, like, for example, I used to really get into some of the footage that you would see from the Mars rover. But then when you see images that are released, that you can see a little rat running across the screen that's supposed to be on Mars. And then you find out where the actual one of the locations is at, in close to Greenland. It's on this island in Canada. Greenland. It's identical. So
yeah, they're testing equipment, and they also have a place off of the west coast of Canada where they're testing equipment and stuff. And they are, I think they're doing the same now, probably, as they did in 1969. They are taking pictures there and telling us that, yep, this is from Mars, but there may be some real pictures from Mars that have things in it, because there are things they don't want us to know. Like, we're told that Mars is red, right? It's a red planet. Well, go to Sedona, Arizona. Everything is red up there. The dirt is red. The mountains are red. Everything is red because of the iron content.
Yeah, and Moab, Utah has a Mars facility. And I tell everybody, you want to go to Mars, go to Moab. It's about as close as it gets.
Yeah, there you go. And the thing is that we see that even on the moon, there is a slight atmosphere, because I have NASA prints showing small clouds flying around up there. And I have a picture of a tube coming out of the ground where there is black smoke coming out of it, just going and bending and blowing away. It wouldn't do that if it was no air on it. So moon has an atmosphere equivalent to probably about 16 to 18, 19,000 feet, which is somewhat similar to in the high mountains of Himalaya. And there's people living up there. So we could live on the moon. Same thing with Mars. We've been told that there is the air up there cannot be, we cannot breathe it. Well, I have vegetation on the website. You can see the pictures on there. And then again, there's another picture I have on there that looks right next to the rover. That looks like a person is standing there, and they don't have a spacesuit on. They look like they have some type of a visor, and then there may be something that helps on the breathing possibly, but there's no spacesuit. So the pressure is okay. It may be that the air possibly is a little, low on oxygen, but we can live in a very low oxygen environment, because there's been air tests done in downtown Tokyo, in Beijing, and in downtown LA, where the oxygen content in the air was down to 7%. And right now, we're breathing probably about 22%. That's normal. But when you get down to 7%, we can still live in it. We just have to breathe a little deeper, and we can do that. So I think most of the time when NASA is showing us something that they want us to know, yeah, I'm throwing my two-headed quarter in the air and figuring out if you know what it is. But if there's things they don't want us to know, I'm giving it a little credence, because if they don't want us to know, I want to know what it is.
And, another thing too, for those of you that have ever researched remote viewing or Ingo Swann, there was a book that was put together many years ago. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I'm sure you can find a PDF. Just type in Ingo Swann, and he talks about how he got abducted by these men in black, take him to an underground facility. They have him remote view of something. He sees these naked humanoids on some green misty area doing some type of mining work. And then he finds out he's actually remote viewing the moon. Afterwards, they tell him, he's like, no way. And anyway, that guy was, as far as he set a trend. I mean, he was definitely one of the best remote viewers of all time. I've had people on the show like Courtney Brown, Dick Algeier, Daz Smith, very good at remote viewing. And you can prove remote viewing. Now, is it 100% accurate? No, but you can prove remote viewing. The government has spent hundreds of millions of dollars of research. Just look up the Stargate program. You can read a ton of declassified documents. They used to remote view drug lords in the Caribbeans and stuff, watching them and being able to say, oh, that person has a specific kind of shoes. He's on a specific type of boat at a particular pier. So it's pretty incredible what they can do.
Absolutely. And you know, if you look at Mars too, what they're showing now is that they're letting out some of the pictures that show blue sky up there. The sky would not be blue unless it had oxygen in it. And if you look at Mars otherwise, it's kind of like Earth in many different ways. It's warmer here, but it is also, it had a nuclear catastrophe somewhere in the distant past. And we know that because they have found a high amount of xenon gas up there. And the xenon gas could not be there unless it was a nuclear discharge. And that we know from Chernobyl and over in Japan, because they had xenon gas released when that nuclear discharge happened in both of those places. So we know that Mars had a terrible, I don't know if I want to call it accident, but a catastrophic event, which probably much of the atmosphere burned up because there is less of it up there. There is, it appears to be around maybe 18 to 20,000 feet of altitude there too. So there's less of atmosphere than it is on Earth. But even NASA coming out now saying that Earth at one time was like Earth. It's just that it isn't that way anymore. And of course, that's obvious. But there are buildings up there. You can see the pictures on, and that those, a lot of those pictures come out of the gigapans that they released. And because they didn't have the time or the chance, I think, to scour every square inch of those millions of miles, you know, pixels that was in there. So if there are people now researching, going in and blowing up the pictures, and they found these incredible things in there. So there is more coming out. And I think when you ask NASA about that, they say, well, gee, we don't know what it is, or they don't want to say anything at all. So there is stuff up there. I'm not so sure how recent it is. I think even the pyramids in the Cydonia era, they looks like they're at least maybe 500,000-year old, because they are
That
being
area is
destroyed.
fascinating. That I'm
Yeah.
absolutely fascinated. I'm so glad you brought up Sidonia. Sorry to interrupt, but I do want to bring up that footage that I've seen from
Mhm.
the 1974 Viking orbiter. I
Yes.
feel is absolutely legit. And if you look at the way it's built upon like a sacred geometry, the Fibonacci sequence, the way that the pyramids are located, the size of the pyramids, the dimensions, it's incredible.
Yes.
Absolutely incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, Hoagland done a phenomenal amount of work on that, and I'm not so sure he's keeping his website up as he probably should. But there's an enormous amount of pictures from Mars there, and you gotta remember, NASA didn't want us to know about this. They didn't talk about it. They didn't want to even discuss it. They said, "Oh, it's just shadows." Yeah, but there is a problem. When they took the second picture of it, they had, they had done away with some of those so that they said it looked different. But I believe the first one, that it looked like a face to me. There's no way around it.
Yeah, that huge face,
Yeah.
and then to the left of it, what looks like ruins of an ancient city, and
Hmm.
the five-sided pyramid, and then to
Yeah.
the right of it, yeah, that's an incredible photograph. The original is amazing, and also I want to give another huge shout out, seriously, to GetTheTea.com. I've been taking these Coral C's. I've been taking 2 a day. A lot of people have been getting sick around me. They've been getting this nasty flu. People have been getting earaches. They're feeling nasty, puking. I'm just taking 2 of these a day in that colostrum, and wow, and a bunch of kombucha. So feeling amazing. And okay, let's talk anything more that you feel is important that I might have missed, because I know I've had you here for over an hour, and I said we're going to do about an hour, and it's been about an hour and 20 minutes. So first of all, I want to say this has been a great discussion. I mean, I love
I had fun.
yeah. And this is a huge crowd. We've got right now there's 1,589 people watching. Just a moment ago, we had over 1,600 people. It's been a steady stream the whole time. So
Mhm.
I'm sure this will get hundreds of thousands of views here in the near future after it's released on leakproject.com, youtube.com/clandestine time lord. But give another shout out to how people can reach you. A lot of people are putting in the comment section, how do I get a hold of this guy? How do I get his book? And tell us a little bit more about anything you feel is really important. And thanks again. This has been seriously a real honor.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say something else, and that is that when we're talking about Mars, go ahead and Google Alternative 3. That, yeah, you smile. I
Oh
know
yeah,
you
I
know
love
what it
that.
is.
Yeah.
There was already back in the 1970s, all the way up to the 80s and 90s, there was a brain drain from Earth, and these people appears to have been just poof disappearing one day. The house, the furniture, the cars are sitting there, but the guy's gone. And he's a scientist. He's a brilliant scientist, and he's just disappeared. And they appeared that they have gone to Mars because there's a couple that has been able to communicate back, and they say we're fine. And if that is so, that means we have an atmosphere on Mars and we got stuff up there. So go ahead and read about Alternative 3. You're going to love what you see if you're into the strange stuff that I am. Otherwise, get a hold of me.
Let me jump in real quick. You know, that reminds me, sorry, but I just got to say this, that for those of you out there that are like, Alternative 3, what's that? Who's John Galt?
Yeah.
Who's John Galt? It's like that, but it's interdimensional space travel.
Mm-hmm.
Please continue. Sorry, I just had to say that real quick.
Okay. Yeah, you can get a hold of me on my website. There's going to be a new website up here, but I'll link that to the old one, so you'll find that too. It's www.aage-nost.com. So it's www.myfirstname-mylastname.com. And if you want to know more about some of the things that we've talked about, including how to reverse your aging process, which appears to have been working for quite a few people, including myself, then you can read the book, find the book, Spiritual Science, Higher Conscious Thinking, and How to Access the Universal Consciousness. And that is also on Amazon, and you find it on the website. But Amazon is actually a quicker way to get it because they get it out the same day. They're telling me that, you get it. And there are things in there. If you look on the back cover, when you go to Amazon, look on the back cover, you can see all the subjects that is in there. And in the back of the book, I talk about time travel and actually how to do it. In 2003, BBC television came over and did a TV documentary on time travel with Michio Kaku and Green and myself. We were discussing time travel and how possible it is. And there are things that makes it possible, and especially when it comes to the mind. I teach people in this book how to develop the mind so you can do some really amazing things with it, including healing yourself. And my co-host on my radio show, she was very bad off health-wise, and she healed herself by thinking herself well. So this can be done, and you can read about it in the book. So go have some fun with it.
Right on. And thank you so much. I mean, seriously, a real honor to speak with you. Also, want to say, ladies and gentlemen, hit the subscribe button, youtube.com/clandestine time lord. Once again, check out aage-nost.com. Be excellent to each other and be the change you want to see.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. And also, don't forget, gettheT.com.